Welcome to episode 2 of our discussion with author Amal El-Mohtar regarding her new novel, The River Has Roots. Let's rejoin her and Mackie Morris in the book room.
Just kind of pretty much tells me everything about Samuel. Like he touches her without, you know what I mean? And gives her
takes
feeling.
liberties. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And he just doesn't seem to respect her as an individual, almost like a thing.
Absolutely.
Whereas Ren inspires these feelings in her that just so poetic. I mean, talk about love.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the difference between, thinking of someone as all of the small irritating things that they do that you hate versus thinking of someone in terms of like the feelings that they provoke in you that you can barely describe because you have to start resorting to like poetry and landscape and stuff like that to think about it. So yeah.
Yeah, I really love that. I mean, it just really kind of makes you visualize what these characters are like. So the book is written in this beautiful lyrical style, which I just really love. It just gives like a creating dreamlike sensory experience. You're reading the words, but you're also having this experience. And it felt similar to the time I read The Tale of Genji because it's very poetic.
Thank you.
I find that lyrical style like transcends into my writing as well, being Japanese.
Yeah.
I just wonder, is your cultural background kind of influence your writing style?
Yeah, it absolutely does. In so many ways, and one of the core ways, honestly, is that I was born in Canada. My family is from Lebanon, and we lived in Lebanon for a couple of years when I was little. And we I was 7. My sister was 5. My brothers were a twinkle in my parents' eyes at that point. But so we were there between 1991 and 1993, and it was while I was there that I wrote my first poem, and it was partly because like I'd been it was like an assignment I had been given in school that I did not complete in time, but I still wanted to write a poem. So I wrote a poem to the moon, which I still, for my sins, remember. And I recited it to my parents, and they, instead of just kind of being indulgent, like, like macaroni art that you put on the fridge or whatever, they got kind of solemn as they heard this, and they said, your grandfather was a poet, and there's a history of poetry in our family, and poetry is very important. And they really made me feel this place that poetry has in the world, and that if I wanted to be a poet, it wasn't just going to be a matter of like playing with pretty words. They really made me feel that poets have a capital P, that there is a sort of speaking truth to power, using words on behalf of people from whom words are taken, who can't speak, speaking on behalf of those who just can't speak for whatever reason, articulating the world when it is horrifying and terrible. And my parents lived through the Civil War in Lebanon, which I didn't understand at that point. And when we were in Lebanon, that period that we were there was during a sort of lull. And we would go out, and we lived in Beirut, and we would go out into the streets, and there were demolished buildings around, and like there were lots of things that were just rubble. And I just remember thinking as a child, well, this is just how Lebanon looks. This is just the way Canada looks a certain way, Lebanon looks a certain way, and the way it looks is broken. And I remember like at some point my parents realizing that and showing me these like coffee table books of they had like a holographic image of rebuilding that was doing. So they would show like on one side things that had been broken, but then that had been repaired. On the other side there was like, and but so they wanted to show me that it didn't used to look this way, like that things had happened to it. And all of that kind of got mixed up into this ferment around poetry, that they just made me feel like if I was going to write a poem, I was taking a step onto a certain path, and that was going to be important. And the funny thing about that too is that, I took this very seriously as I was 7, and like when you're 7, you're so ready to be given like a quest, and stuff. This was the same time that I was reading, The Hobbit for the first time. Most of what we were reading while we were there was in English because ironically, my parents worried that I would forget English when we were in Lebanon. So I was reading a lot in English, and I was going to school in Arabic and French because of colonialism. So they were concerned that English would get left behind. English never gets left behind. No one forgets English. So sadly, Arabic is my language of least fluency now. But all the same, while I was there, I was reading The Hobbit. I reading Doctor Who novelizations. I didn't know Doctor Who was a TV show. I just thought it was books. And so there was all of this was getting mixed up with this instruction towards poetry. But I wasn't really reading any poetry except for these children's digest versions of Shakespeare's plays. So the first poem that I wrote had these and thous in it because I had read those. But I wasn't reading Arabic poetry. I was reading very much in English and stuff. And then when I came back to Canada, I kept kind of going in that direction. And my father in particular was really interested in, me learning these things. He, again, because of colonialism, in Lebanon, when he was growing up, he had been taught out of a Norton anthology and stuff. So he could, he actually taught me about iambic pentameter and told me that the way that he had been taught it was with a derbaki, the hand drums. So shall I compare the two with summer's day, So all of that to me is kind of mixed up with my family background, with my family culture. And even though I wasn't reading in Arabic, my father would recite my grandfather's poetry to me and tell me that his he spent a lot of time imprisoned for his politics. My father's father, and so my father would tell me that while he was in prison, he would sometimes extemporize poetry off the dome to make fun of the guards who were torturing them and the terrible food and stuff and keep people's morale up. And what we have in our home is actually this piece of that, because many, many years after that, someone came and found my father and gave him this very strange gift of a bunch of toilet paper, because while my grandfather had been in prison reciting this verse that he was making up, the person in the cell next to him had a stub of pencil and a roll of toilet paper and was writing it down, and had kept this for decades, and then found my father at some point and gave this to him. So at home we have this long framed length of toilet paper with my grandfather's verse on it, that came out of this horrific circumstance and stuff. So, and it's always, I grew up with that there as this thing. And I knew my grandfather, I got to meet him as a child and stuff. He passed away before we went to Lebanon. But he lived with us in our home in Canada and stuff for a while first. So all of this is there basically, and it's funny because when I'm writing something that is very, very much about the British ballad tradition, I can't help but still bring any of that in. There's the song that the sisters sing to the willows is a Palestinian song that's it's called Terwidi Shmeli, or the lover's hymn, or the song of northern song. And yeah, so on it's I can say it is specifically that song. I don't mention it in the text, but my sister and I do sing it together on the audiobook. So it's there. It's just described in the text as a song that sort of sounds like Arabic but doesn't quite. And it has like the implication is that it comes from Arcadia. So Arcadia as this like space of magic and potential and history and contemporaneity at the same time, to me, is where I put all of my feelings about the Middle East and about like where my family is from.
See, I knew this was a special book. I just knew it.
Thank you.
So when I was reading your book, it just, I now I could see this background that your poet in you comes out.
Thank you.
Because the story just felt like you were telling a story, like a painting a story with your words.
Mm-hmm.
And it just felt really special. And I felt all the emotions. So it's
so much.
It's
that
a
really
wonderful book. So speaking of beautiful things, your book, the cover, and especially the illustration on the inside. How did that come about?
Oh my gosh. So the cover is, the brainchild of Face Out Studio did it. I think the main person on it, I'm just going to look this up. I think Spencer Fuller, I think, was the person who was like most responsible for the end result of it. And I think like literally for a different interview, he just wrote a bunch of stuff that I can even quote. So I'm quoting him in an email right now, but this idea of a far-reaching and deep river with all of its tributaries and offshoots felt like looking at a hydrological map in my head, he says. So he says he set out to represent this idea as simply as he could, and then pair it with floral elements to connect it more to the imagery in the book, as well as like drawing the eye in with a slightly, as he says, overstimulating look, which I super love. I love what I love about it when I look at it is that there's so much contrast going on. There's the kind of wiggly line looks like a hydrological like map of a river. It also makes me think of like a little bit like the London Underground, weirdly. So there's something that feels really contemporary and strange about it. But it's also when you can look through it to a painting that looks a lot more pastoral, and out of which like these like gigantic romantic blooms are just like dazzling. And to me, that feels the way that I want Arcadia to feel in the book, as something that like you can both kind of peer into at a distance, but that also erupts in these really disruptive ways that have to be managed and filtered and stuff. So I deeply like, I was so blown away by this cover, and also by all of the interior designs, all of the illustrations. The actual like there are illustrations that look like woodcuts that are by Kathleen Neely, and like my editor Ali Fisher had is the one who was like, I really can see like Kathleen Neely illustrations for this. We had talked a little bit about general like visual ideas and stuff for we'd been talking like about the cover long before and thought that that we might ask her for that, I think, but then because the book is very short, Ali was like, there's room for illustrations. We could make this be an illustrated book. And that could play into the fact that it feels like a fairy tale, like something where, there's the narrative voice of it is one of like telling you a story in the same way that, a once upon a time kind of voice does. So I love that there are these woodcuts in it and they're so gorgeous. I also, when I saw them in email, I was not expecting them to be like, I thought they would be smaller. I thought they would like be smaller on the page. And I was just so thrilled when I got my copies. And the very first one is just, when I look at it, it makes me feel the way I feel like in this story. It's so beautiful and huge, and highly recommend looking up Kathleen Neely. In general, she does prints of these. Like if you like her art style, I cannot enough recommend checking out the rest of her work. It's so gorgeous.
Yeah, it's the illustrations are so gorgeous, and it's full page, and you just feel that, there's a feeling to those illustrations. That's what I'm trying to take
Yeah.
at. It's not flat. They speak to you.
Yeah, and they feel textured. They suggest. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, I think Kathleen actually made wood block. Like I think she actually carved these and made them. I'm pretty sure that's the case. I think she had sketches first, and then she that they are actually block prints. Basically, they're not just like designed to look that way. And I think that's part of why they're so effective to me, is that you look at it and you can feel the full physical process of them ending up there. And when Kathleen also chose all the moments that she wanted to illustrate. Or at least I had nothing to do with it. I don't know if there were conversations between her and my editor that I wasn't privy to, but I loved when I saw them. I thought that she zeroed in on some all the parts that I wanted to have illustrated, and some that I would never have dreamt of having illustrated because it just wouldn't have occurred to me. Like the fact there's a cup at one point, and stuff that she makes so evocative and lovely, and it's truly such a gift. Like I'm so aware of this with this book. The amount of artistry that other people have brought to it, have brought to the words, is so humbling and so wonderful. Like between Kathleen's illustrations and the cover and the production design more generally, like all of the bits of willow that are in between the pages, those aren't Kathleen. I think those are like the layout designers are the ones who put those in. But the audiobook in particular is such it blows my mind so much. I've only heard snippets of the finished product so far, but those snippets are they're just experiencing a landscape. Like there's running water, there's there's music, there's singing. Jem Carmella's narration is its own rich, stunning art. To hear a performer just take your words and run them through the engine of her own art is staggering, honestly. So I feel like I wrote a story that was simple. I just put some words on a page, and then all these other people come in and make it just blossom into something that is so much more than the sum of its parts. And I'm truly just I'm beyond myself with gratitude for it, but also just mind blown by it. So yeah,
that's another great segue, because I was going to ask you about your audiobook.
Yeah,
what that experience was like, and then now that you talked about you singing,
yes.
Would you want to share a song from their audiobook?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, sure. So first I'll say that Steve Wagner of Macmillan Audio was such a dream to work with. In that, early on in this project, I was like, so this book, it kind of comes from my sister and I sing together. We always have. Anytime I describe the way it sounds when Isabel and Esther sing together is me describing the way that I feel when I hear my sister and my voices blending, which has nothing to do with whether or not other people would feel that way. It's just how I feel. My sister is an actual musician. She, went to conservatory. She plays the flute. She has training. She taught music for many years as well. I'm a dilettante. I play the harp, and I'm very aware of the fact that the harp is a much more charismatic instrument. She and I we used to play music at weddings and stuff together, and I always felt a little bashful about the fact that people would flock to the harp because it's so unusual and it's such a beautiful instrument. And I'm my sister is the much more accomplished musician. But all this to say, on the audiobook, so anyway, Steve was very, very receptive to my suggestions that maybe my sister and I could play music together and put this and so on, and made it happen. And it was a dream to do. My sister and I turned up at a local studio, and it was wonderful. We just did a bunch of takes. We sang in particular the Professor's Hymn together. And it's gonna sound weird to me to do it without her, because I just feel like everything, like it, as I think I literally describe in the book, like Esther, just, this is autobiographical for me. Esther doesn't feel like her voice is anything particularly special without her sisters, and that is very much how I feel. But I'll sing the Professor's Hymn. It's just like, so a thing about this, there's a technique in this Palestinian song called mlula, and it's a way of encoding messages in the song that will not be comprehensible to someone who isn't a native Arabic speaker. And also, like, honestly, people who are native speakers still have like trouble parsing what the meaning is, because it's it's kind of like, you know, like Pig Latin in the sense, like you're introducing a la 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 sound in the middle of words to make it difficult to understand. So there is this history of this kind of song being used to communicate to people who've been imprisoned that they're going to be, you know, jailbroken out soon and stuff like that. So this is a song that's ostensibly about like the north wind carrying messages back and forth between lovers. So it goes, Shameli laliya hawelele diri shameli laliya rwelelo على ليلة الابواب هولو لم تفتح شاملي لاليار ويليلو وانا ليلة لبعت مع ليلة الريح الشاملي لاليار ويليلو يسألي لروي دور ليلي على لحبالي لا بايار ويليلو. And then it just sort of repeats.
That's beautiful.
Like thank you.
That is so beautiful.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
So my sister and I sing that together in the background of a lot of the stuff that Jem is narrating. And yeah, I want to say, if I can shout this out as well, I first heard this on an album called Zajil by El Funun, Palestinian dance troupe. It's like a 2014 album. But they have, like, they found this field recording, basically, of an old woman singing it from, like, decades earlier, and they've, like, entwined it with that. So if you look up the song Lover's Hymn on that album, that, like, there's a much kind of richer, huger production of it and stuff. But yeah, I really wanted to combine the fact that there's a sort of secret keeping in the song itself, and the fact that my sister and I get to sing it together on the audiobook is its own sort of like encoding of this sort of secret thing there. And yeah, it feels important to do. But yeah,
it's definitely a special audiobook as well. I mean, you know, that's really unique and beautiful.
Thank you.
So are you going to be doing any book signings or appearances where
yes.
your fans can meet you?
Oh my gosh, so many. I've never been on a tour of this size or scale or anything like this before. So there's a 5-city tour that kicks off on March 4th. March 4th, I'm going to be in New York City, in Brooklyn at Books Are Magic, in conversation with Helen Rosner, who is just one of the most brilliant people I know, and an incredible food writer for The New Yorker. On the 5th, I'm going to be in Portland, Maine, in conversation with Catherine Valenti, who's a dear friend of Standing and also an incredible... All of these writers are incredible writers. And then on the 6th, I'm going to be in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, with Alyssa Wong, who's a dear friend as well. On the 7th, I'm going to be in Cincinnati with Gwenda Bond, at Joseph Beth Booksellers. I should have this is all exists in like a document somewhere and stuff. And then on the 8th, I'm going to be in St. Louis at Left Bank Books in conversation with Anne Leckie. And then like that's the kind of poor portion. Then on all of March is basically appearances. I'm going to be at the Tucson Festival of Books. I'm going to be at WonderCon in Anaheim. I'm going to be at the Texas Library Association conference at the beginning of April. And then I'm going to come home for like a week and then probably go to C2E2 in Chicago. I say probably because travel is so chancy and strange, and crossing the border has in the past been a little tricky for me. So, but fingers crossed, and hopefully I'll get to see people, because I'm so excited too. People have been so unbelievably kind about this already. Like I got tagged in cosplay on Instagram, and I was like people have been cosplaying This Is How You Lose the Time War in ways that are always like dazzling with their creativity and stuff. But this book feels so like small and quiet and intimate. I just didn't think that it would be, inspiring to cosplayers in the same way. So to see people like, get dressed up in period clothing with a harp and a flute by a river and stuff just made me like honestly like want to cry. It was so cool. So I really hope I get to meet people, and most of those places are places I haven't been in the States before. So I'm especially excited to go and see them, however briefly. I'm a bird nerd as well, so I'm like bringing my binoculars and hoping like just look out the hotel windows and see if I can see a bird I haven't seen before and stuff. So we'll see.
Well, we'll definitely make a list of your appearances, so your fans could kind of follow you and meet you.
Yes, yeah.
So, Amal, this has been such a pleasure.
Likewise,
speaking with you about your book, and I'm sure it's going to do really well, because there's so much personal touch into this thing, and to kind of feel it from the story.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah. Definitely. And I hope I get to meet you.
Likewise.
It would be really fun.
I would love that. So I ask whereabouts in the world you are?
I'm in California, but if we come down to Anaheim, maybe, who knows?
Heck yeah. I want to be in Anaheim and I want to be in LA. So we'll see if hopefully that would be delightful if our paths could cross. I would really love that.
Great. And it was just such a great pleasure to meet you. So thank you so much for being my podcast.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's been honestly an honor and a pleasure. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you for joining our podcast. We hope you visit again as we discover new books to read.